Welcome to the South Carolina High School Credential Video Learning Series, Employment Coursework Presentation. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to the panel of presenters for this webinar. From the South Carolina Public Charter School District, Susan Howard. From Francis Marion University and the Transition Alliance of South Carolina, Cindy Nixon. And from the Transition Alliance of South Carolina, Jennifer Wall. Cindy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let's briefly look at the agenda. Mike just finished the introductions and housekeeping. We're going to cover a brief review on the coursework required, talk about pacing guides for the employability courses, putting it together in the classroom setting, how do you implement the coursework, and finally wrap up and any questions that you may have. Looking briefly at the required coursework for the South Carolina credential, high school credential. As you can see, it includes for English, for math, 2 science, 2 social studies, 4 employability education classes, 1 PE health, 1 technology, and then 6 electives. Please keep in mind that the electives can be, and hopefully will be in Gen Ed. PE would be in Gen Ed. So there are options for students to take Gen Ed classes with their credential. You do have to have the 24 credits in order to receive the high school credential. Just a brief review about the components of teaching. Keep in mind that teaching is based on standards, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Your standards are those year-end goals, and they will guide curriculum, your instruction, and how you assess the students. Curriculum then is developed based on the standards, and instruction is your support to help the students navigate the curriculum. And based on that, formal and informal assessments will guide and inform your instruction as you move through the courses. One note to be aware of, the employability education courses have identified objectives and not standards. Moving on to the organizational structure of the coursework. When you open the document, this is basically what you will see to guide you. And we're actually going to move into the index and look at one of the courses just so you can become familiar with how it works. So let's do that right now and move into the actual website. When you get on the resource page, you will pull up the South Carolina course descriptions. And let's look at the index very quickly. Once you get into the index, each of the courses listed before under the credits required, you will find the Essentials of English 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you are working on, for example, writing standards for English 1, you would certainly go and click on page 13 and it will take you to that section. Let's look at one of the employability classes. Under Employability 1, which would be in 9th grade, students coming into 9th grade would take this. And as you will see, they are divided into different units: self-awareness, self-advocacy, communication and social skills, portfolio, self-determination, thinking about work, soft skills, and planning for employment. So if we open one of those pages up, you will see the course description, for Employability 1, the objective, and under self-awareness, this particular objective is formulate an awareness of self to include personal strengths, challenges, and other relevant characteristics. And you will see 7 competencies. And the students must meet those competencies to be successful in this particular unit. This is how the courses are made up. It's very simple, and I would encourage you to become familiar with the courses by going into the index and looking at those different requirements. And with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Excellent. Task has developed a live binder. We can, if you go to the South Carolina High School Credential page, you will see on there, if you click it, I think it'll circle. Under the Resources tab, we have developed a live binder. If you do not know what a live binder is like a 3-ring binder that is on the web. It helps you to organize your resources all in one location. It's a website that allows you to view links like pages in a book instead of URLs on a page. You can have up to 5 free live binders on an account that is free. The live binders that we created for the employability education are housed on our website, so you do not have to download them. You can just go to our website. The way that we did this is we took the competencies for employability education. We had teachers review resources that were developed by federal grants, state grants, and other research projects. They used evidence-based practices. They looked at the ease of use, the units and lessons and materials for teachers before they were ever added into our live binder. Once you click on the Resources tab, you will go straight to the South Carolina High School Credential Coursework and Assessments. Most of you have probably gone to this website already. Once you click on the coursework, you will want to scroll down. Once on this page, you will click on competencies. Here it says Employability 1. When you click on the competencies, you see the document. If you notice on all of these documents, the actual objective is blue and hyperlinked. And so if you simply click on self-awareness, you go straight to the live binder. Each of the employability links have these binders attached to them on our website. It will take you to the landing page here and has our statement that the resources have been vetted by our teachers and experts in the field, but that in no way requires you to use any of these resources. These are simply supplemental materials. And then if you see on the left column, all of the resources for each of those specific competencies related to self-awareness. And within employability education, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you will have live binder links for all of those. If you are using something that you think should be added to the live binder, there is a shared space on our website that we would love to be able to share that resource with other teachers too. And on the sub-tabs on the side, once you click on those, like I said earlier, it's a link. So where you see this credential logo in the middle of your screen, when you click on those sub-tabs to the left where it says learning style, me, curriculum, etc., you will see that website pop up to the middle. You do not have to download any of those resources. You simply can go back to them on our website, or if you wish, you can print them or use them right there on your computer. And now,
oh, sorry, Jennifer.
No, I was just going to introduce you. Go ahead.
So this is Susan Howard, and when we're looking at all the resources that Cindy and Jennifer talked about, I'm going to discuss how we're putting it together in the classroom setting. So when we talk about the classroom setting, we need to know that there are key resources out there, and Jennifer and Cindy have gone over a lot of really good resources for us already. There's also on the task webpage, there's the South Carolina High School Credential Crosswalking Guidance, because as we know in schools, students don't always just start with us in 8th grade and we're programming for their exit options and we go through high school with them. We have kids moving in from different districts. We have students moving in from different states. We also have students that are on traditional high school diplomas that the team are considering moving them to a credential and vice versa. So that crosswalking guidance tool is very informative to guide schools and IEP teams through what would need to be addressed and things to consider. There's also a requirement that every school district has a high school credential policy and procedures for their school district. And within that policies and procedures can outline what years different courses are being taken, and also when students are looking at the training and work experience, what years the district is looking at and expecting those experiences to occur. So when IEP teams are programming for students, they really need to understand what their district policies are, so then they can align the students' program with their district policies. Then finally, we've talked about it already, is the high school credential webpage is a great resource. When we look at models of implementation of implementing a high school credential for a student, it is a hodgepodge. There's a pure high school credential student where that student is doing what Cindy had outlined, all the requirements required for a high school credential, and then taking also the elective courses and more just aligned perfectly with that. There's also a student who I said in here, it's a hybrid high school credential and high school diploma coursework, but really if the child's on a high school credential, that's their outcome, but maybe they are taking Carnegie units within. And an example of this could be, and I experienced this a lot, is a student who just absolutely their Achilles heel is math. So maybe they can do a high school English 1, 2, 3, and 4, but they cannot do math. And so the algebra 1, the geometry, all of that is, they will not succeed. So when we're looking at that, this is an option that it would be a hybrid model. And it's not an all or nothing. If a student needs, and the IEP team programs for them, a student can be in some of these other courseworks that will count. So a high school credential course work for a student may have a Carnegie unit course in it, and it can count towards a credential outcome as long as they have passed that coursework. So a student cannot get a failing grade in English 1 and have it count towards a high school credential. Now, this hybrid model isn't always as common, but it is plausible, and the team just needs to program for the child in advance. The implementation of the services, student can take a hybrid, take a high school credential coursework in a gen ed setting, in a special ed setting, or in both of them. It is up to the IEP team to consider where that child's LRE are. When you do that, an IEP team and a school needs to consider the challenges. If a student is taking a credential coursework, but it's in a gen ed setting, it would be with modifications, because as Cindy outlined, there are objectives, not standards, and they are different. The outcome requirements are different in that classwork. So a team would need to consider, what is the role of the special education teacher if it's administering live in that class, supporting that gen ed teacher, because it is a modification. Also, the student must be enrolled in the course codes for that class. So for example, if a student is taking Essentials of English 1, but the team said, no, that child needs to be in a gen ed environment. So maybe they go into an English 1 course, but there would be a separate course code for that child because they're in a modified class of Essentials of English 1. There are challenges to that model, but it's very doable and we've seen it done. Just don't always assume that child has to be in a special ed setting because they're taking Essentials of English 1. So understand the needs of your building when you're planning, and understand what the requirements are for the credential when you're planning. Factors for the IEP team to consider is the strengths of the students. Like I just said in the previous slide, it's not just predetermined that all these coursework is being done in this setting. It's a program for a student, it's not a place for a student. So consider the strengths and needs for the students as you're determining where this is going to occur. A course of study is critical when you're planning for a student in high school. When you're planning for a student, you have to really be considering not just this year, but the following year, the year after. So there should be a 4-year course of study, or if the team determines appropriate, maybe it's a 5 or a 6-year course of study. The best practice is having that course of study being discussed in the context of an IEP meeting, and also at the same time be doing an IGP, because all the parties are there and it's best use of everyone's time. When you're discussing credits, when you're discussing course of study, make sure that the team is realizing, or the stakeholders of the student, that the guidance counselor is the lead when discussing that. The case manager, the special ed case manager, is not the expert in course of study, is not the expert in credits. So everyone needs to be working together, and always in the end, make sure when you're determining if a high school credential is appropriate for a student, or what type of model you're using, or what LRE is going to be considered, that you're using data of the student to make those decisions. When you're looking at building staff are key in having a solid and strong high school credential outcome in your building. You need to identify key staff of who can be the people that other staff can go to ask questions. It shouldn't always just be the special education department chair or case managers. It could be a guidance counselor, an administrator, a career specialist. There are people who need to be the experts in the building. Also, staff as a whole must have a basic understanding of what the credential is, because they are teaching those children. Those students are students of the whole building first and foremost, and everyone needs to be aware, because you could have a student who's leaving for work experience or doing work training in the cafeteria, and a teacher may not understand what's going on and question the student. So everyone needs to be aware of that. And then also with that, be proactive when you're considering what resources does that building you work in have to build skills in students. If it's just basic, background information, skill acquisition, assessing where a student's at in their training process or actual training. Look at within your building campus, and also within your district. Many districts are little mini communities of multiple different types of jobs. So be proactive when you're looking at that. Don't wait for that student to come in and say, I have no options for this student. So we need to kind of have a bag of tricks ready to go. When you're looking at the classroom setting, that's when you're really looking at where is this instruction occurring. And if it is the general ed setting, you need to be considering, and I kind of previewed that earlier in my discussion, but you really need to be considering how is that special education teacher supervising the implementation of those modifications. Because it is the role of the special ed teacher to do the modifications, but maybe a gen ed teacher is teaching it and how comfortable they are. Our general education teachers have different skill sets, so we need to be understanding what they need to be effective for student outcomes. We also can look at different models. So the gen ed teacher may be in there, and maybe a co-teaching experience where special ed and gen ed teachers both in there, or maybe there's other staff that's in there to support that student, or maybe it is just the general education teacher. That needs to be considered based on skill sets and needs of students. No matter what, time to collaborate must occur. If the LRE is in a special education setting, that general education teacher is a huge asset to our special ed staff and subject content. They are huge assets regarding how you're going to take a scope and sequence, how you're going to look at that, and then how the special education teacher is going to modify it and have objectives and how those outcomes are going to occur. So there's resources and critical knowledge that can be used for those two types of teachers to be collaborating together. When we look at the community is a huge asset to all of our students, not just our students pursuing a high school credential. But when we look at community, community is the ultimate end. We start in the classroom with skills instruction. Then we look at the school for implementing skills and demonstrating skills. And then we would look at the community as the ultimate end and hopefully employment or more education. So in that best practice would be that's classroom, school, community. So access your resources in your community, be proactive. Don't wait for a student to say, I really like carpentry. And then you're finding ways to access something in the community for that student. So understand the resources of your community. Also identify people and key organizations to assist you. You're not alone. There's a huge community of people to help with increasing outcomes for these students. That could be your local VR rep. It could be a community college, a vocational program, or businesses. A lot of human resource communities have human resources groups that talk and will advocate and let you know what's going on and can be a liaison with you. So that's really important, just to understand that and develop a network. I didn't even put that in there, but having a resource fair could be a way to start that conversation. Then also understand what your policy in your district is on transportation. Some districts will transport students if they're receiving job training that's not paid. Some districts will not transport at all. Some districts will have requirements within the transportation. So understand what your transportation policy is in your district regarding students, and then that will help you understand what resources are available for individual students. And finally, anticipate scheduling conflicts. So as students get older or more advanced in the high school credential, those work hours are accumulating. And I don't know if you guys have experienced a student who is out working and pursuing a high school credential, but the school does not dictate their schedule, the business does. And when that happens, it can lead to conflicts within the actual school schedule for that student. So pre-anticipate how you may problem solve. Not that that's going to eliminate problem solving in the end, because every student brings a unique experience, but it will provide with some answers. So how are you going to code students when they're doing work experience? How is attendance, like signing in and out of the building to understand what students are off campus? How are you documenting that work experience in the sense of how are you getting information back from the employer or the trainer? And then how are you communicating with them directly? And then also students navigating the campus, leaving or getting back on. So there are a lot of components that I didn't even list that are factors that you would need to consider and problem solve, as it's not a typical school structured day for a student within the building. So when you're looking at training, make sure you're always looking at skills in the classroom, implementing in the school, and then going out into the community. And it's a good scaffold of structure for a student.
Okay, this concludes today's webinar. Please know that no question goes unanswered. We invite you to refer to the IEP team guidance document, crosswalking document, and the frequently asked questions document. Additionally, you may ask a unique question using the South Carolina High School Credential Inquiry Form. And finally, if you are a special education director, you can request technical assistance. These options are available by accessing the website, www.thesccredential.org. By visiting the website, you can also register for upcoming South Carolina High School Credential webinars. Thank you, and have a great day.